I don't know.
Perfect. Okay, so I just hit record. If you have to go, just, hang on as long as you can. I really like this breakdown. I just think it helps because it doesn't matter how many times I'm hearing about, the science behind menopause, what it looks like, what our hormones do. It's still just it hits me a little different every time. And then I usually take away one or two things. So I thought, you know what? I feel like we can't kind of talk about this enough. Let me turn off my captions. So basically, menopause is puberty part two. So if any of you remember the first time, I remember the first time I got my period, and I don't know if your parents or, your mom, like some of us had like amazing education around what was happening to our bodies. For me, I got my period and my friends had educated me, like my girlfriends and said, oh, it was kind of like who's going to get their period first? Like I feel like did you anyone read that book, Hello, God, It's Me, Margaret? Anyone read that by Judy Blume? No. So we were all, like, who's gonna get it? And so my one friend got hers before me, and then I was out swimming at Lake Minnetonka, on like a boat and, having a great old time. And oh my gosh, I got my period. I was 13. But I didn't tell my mom because I wasn't that comfortable with my mom. Like we didn't really talk about that kind of stuff, which is sad, I feel like. But I then just kind of got my own tampons and just kind of told her like 3 months later, like, oh yeah, I have my period, mom. What's up? So I don't know what the rest, but it was definitely a challenging time emotionally, I feel like. And, none of that stuff was really explained. And so now we're doing it again. And I feel like it's still somewhat of a gray area or really black and white. Like everyone knows, oh, we're going to get hot flashes, you're going to gain weight and blah, blah, blah. But let's just talk about it. What is the physiological things that are going on? What are some of the ways we can treat some of the symptoms? What works and why is this program even geared the way it is? So basically, it's getting, not having your hormones or cessation. So having your period full time is what it means to be in menopause. And I'll talk to quite a few ladies on calls and they'll say, well, I'm not in menopause anymore. And I'm like, well, you technically are always in menopause. So it decreases the amounts of estrogen and progesterone. So that's what that does. And that's why we end up in menopause. And so that's how our cycles go to in the 28 days that you have them. There's increase and decrease in hormones throughout the month. So we essentially are different, our bodies, from day one of our period to day 28. Our body changes physiologically and how it deals with stress and everything. So this is just more of a permanent, and in perimenopause it's much more erratic as it's changing. So it's definitely natural and it's good for your body and it's part of what we do. So there's nothing bad about it, nothing we need to feel bad about. There's nothing like wrong. It's just a matter of understanding how we will then work with our bodies and our hormones. And I think it's the same within our cycles. So estrogen, progesterone, and androgens are fluctuating, but periods are still present. So this slide's a little funky, but this is perimenopause. So typically we're going to see decreases and changes in hormones starting in our early 40s. For some, it happens as early as 30. So it's kind of like when you get your menses, it can be as early as 11, 12. It can be as late as 15, 16. So it's all kind of different, kind of genetic. And it's just the natural transitions toward permanent, infertility. So you won't have your menses anymore. So that's a good part of it. But in between times, it's just a transition. So ovarian function starts to decline, but it's still happening. And that goes on for like 3 to 5 years. So this is why I feel like it's really important as soon as you start to hit perimenopause to, make some changes in your workouts, make some changes with your food, realize that even just the trauma of the fluctuation of hormones could create excess belly fat, things not working as well, thyroid function going down, some insulin, sensitivity, because of perimenopause. So let's just go over the menstrual cycle really quick. So we have, in our body, every single month, we're preparing to release an egg, right? So there's an ovarian cycle, endometrial, pituitary hormone cycle, and a sex hormone. And so all these different things kind of happen. So if we look at day one, we'll see our hormones are going to fluctuate. And typically between day one and ovulation and day 14, 15, we're going to see estrogen starts to rise and progesterone is basically lower. So this estradiol is happening. It's the follicular phase. So this is the time in the month where you can eat more carbs. Technically, if you're carb sensitive, you can eat more overall. So maybe you have cravings and it's like your body's looking for nutrients. So that's really normal and natural. Another thing that, if I were to design a program for someone in their menstrual cycle, I would do the tougher workouts, meaning let's incorporate more cardio, more stressful kind of workouts the first 1 to 15 days. And then once we get to the luteal phase, you can see there's a pretty sharp dip here in the estradiol, and then our progesterone goes up. And so our estradiol is like our, introvert or extroverted sister. So she's like out there and she can deal with, some people are, kind of hermits or whatnot. Like you got someone inside you that's able to deal with all that really well. And she knows just what to say, just what to do. She knows how to maintain your muscle, burn fat, help you sleep, deal with your stress. Like she's pretty spectacular. But progesterone is kind of that buffer. And so we need both. But so toward the end of your cycle, you're seeing that progesterone go up. And so when we have menopause or a period for a little bit, we basically are in this flat line. We don't have a lot of estrogen, we don't have a lot of progesterone, and that's why we're able to have our cycle, so our menses. And that's where we stay in menopause, just to kind of, keep you there. And our bodies are made in a certain way that, like we have more sex drive around ovulation because we're looking to make a baby. It's ovulation time. So for like 7 days, your sex hormones go up and all of that. So that's kind of interesting too. Any questions about that? Or are you guys pretty understanding, knowing what to do there?
So sorry, where did you say we stay in menopause? Can you circle
Yeah.
that part on that graph,
Yeah.
like with your
So
pointer again?
yes. So can you see it right
That
here?
was there. Yep. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So we're kind of in our bleeding phase. Like this is everything's really flatlined. And so the one thing that I really wish that I need to do this research myself. And so I know it's out there. I need to figure out or find out what happens to our testosterone. Because what I see in menopausal women all the time, Rita, is like this dip in testosterone too. So, but I think when you're definitely in this whole phase and you're going into ovulation, our body has more testosterone overall. Testosterone is our sex hormone. So, but everything just remains really flat. So it's kind of good because once you get into the rhythm and you learn how to work out and eat for your body, you can say, okay, I feel good. Nothing's going to change again. So it's like you kind of got to get over that hump. Or you can do things like HRT. You can increase your testosterone by doing some more strength training workouts. Eating more protein even can do that. Even like live speaking events. It's kind of crazy, but like that's our male kind of hormone. So we can be more male dominant that way. And some women I just see physiologically, they have more testosterone. But more so I see it with the women who are consistently strength training every single week. So our hypothalamus links to our nervous system in our endocrine system. So this is the pituitary gland. So any of you who have had the Dutch test, we've kind of gone over that. An overactive pituitary gland a lot of times will signal that we have issues with the thyroid, even if your doctor has said, you know what, you don't. I would beg to say you do. especially if they did a TSH panel and they look at your T3 and T4, their levels are really outdated for what they're looking at. So if I see a T3 that's kind of sunk, that's definitely like, at least let's get some selenium in your diet. Make sure you're having iodized table salt. Because a lot of us are doing those fun pink Himalayan salt and stuff, and like, okay, I'm so healthy, but we're actually not getting enough iodine anymore because we don't have our iodized table salt. So a white iodized, like, I don't want to demonize that. That can do a lot of good for your body. But more than likely selenium as well. Like, it comes in foods, but that's why we're always back to like, let's eat as much whole foods as we can. Let's not decrease our food intake too much because we're not going to be getting the nutrients. And then we want to double check, is our gut incorporating all of these foods and nutrients that we're putting into it? Because things like iodine make things like our thyroid work better, and it's already under some kind of stress. So there's FSH, estrogen, progesterone. So all of these things, I think I like to kind of just highlight, they all work together. So it's kind of like in community, in life, we all work together. Like, there's not one human, I believe, that is smarter than another as far as in some area. Usually someone excels, whether or not it be the same, it's just different. And the more that we can love each other, accept each other, and understand all the different parts, the more we can facilitate and be a better community. It's the same with our body. Like, there's not one part that we can shut off. So that's why we, when all of this stuff happens, it's natural, but just understand, if one part isn't functioning as well, it's probably going to be like a ripple effect into the whole body. And so that way we have to kind of do certain things to optimize these hormones again, get things back together. So one thing that I think is, kind of, I would say, is a hard and almost like a waste of time, is to try to eat enough estrogen. Like, if you've ever seen, Kim in Sex in the City, anyone a Sex in the City watcher? Like, one of her, she's having hot flashes and she's putting yams on her body and stuff, and she's like, this is estrogen. And I'm like, okay, that's funny, but it probably is not going to work. Like, that is, you can eat those kinds of foods, but really that is something that should be managed. Either we're going to take down stress, realize we don't have it, try to take down our cortisol. That's definitely one way, or we're going to maybe do some kind of hormone replacement therapy. So let's look really quick at the hypothalamus, the anterior. So anterior just means front of the body. So the posterior is the back, the anterior is the front. So there's just the front part, and then basically our FSH goes into our immune cells. And so all of this stuff is working together. So when somebody comes to me and they say, you know what, I had a hysterectomy and they took my ovaries, and like, that is going to look a lot different than somebody who has one ovary, or something like that. So I always ask, like, okay, with your hysterectomy, did you have your ovaries taken? Most of the time they won't, because they want all of these things to work for as long as you can, because the ovaries secrete the estrogen. So immediately, if someone has a hysterectomy, they're going to need like an estrogen patch kind of for a long time. But that also has its risks. So to me, it's like, oh, let's try to keep it, because hear about things like we're having bone issues, our immune system isn't flowing as well, you have excess inflammation. All of that can happen from not having our ovaries function as much, or our estrogen. So it is a big deal to have this change. So also what happens is there's a finite number of eggs. So we are born with all the eggs that we're ever going to have. And so as we start to age, though, they become less responsive, they're harder to fertilize, and are increased incidence of, birth defects. That's why it's like, oh, you have a geriatric pregnancy after 40. So my sister just had a baby. She's 41. They called it a geriatric pregnancy. I'm sure she felt really good about that. But the the reason for that is like if you have perimenopause starting in your 30s where it's not doing as well, then the risks in the 40s are just a little bit higher. So our estrogen levels can be normal, decreased, or oftentimes elevated. And one of the ways you kind of know that your estrogen is elevated is if you um, are a bottom gainer. So for me, I had a really big butt, and so did my mom. And I'm like, okay, did this just go throughout our family, or did we have too much milk with, hormones in it? I don't know. But for whatever reason, mine was elevated. And then that I shifted from bottom gaining to middle section gaining. So that told me, yeah, you're definitely in perimenopause. And then another way you kind of understand estrogen levels are changing is more severe PMS, shorter cycles. When I say more severe, like now 2 to 3 days before my period, I know it's happening because I'll cry. And I'm like, I never used to really be like that. I don't know. It's okay to cry, but yeah, I'll be crying. And it's like, okay, it definitely affects my emotions, my brain, everything. And then our progesterone level is decreased, and it's largely because of the lack of ovulation. You'll also see sometimes like discolor in your menses. So sometimes it can be light pink or more of a brown, and be a longer cycle too, where you're just shedding, and that brown is basically like sloughing off of the cells, but later on because the estrogen levels are so erratic in the progesterone. But these two, remember, work together. One is introverted, the progesterone, one is extroverted. So I love that. That's Dr. Jade Teta. He taught me that. And I'm like, that's such a good way for me to think of the two of them. So the ratio of progesterone to estrogen is essential to normal function of the female body. So I've heard of some women getting just like an estradiol patch. I worry about that, like, because I don't understand why they would do that. And I also worry if your OB or whatnot is not testing your hormones, like they should see what the baseline is so they kind of get an idea. I have heard them speak about like, we know it's happening, we know what's going on, but it's like, it's nice to see amounts. After ovulation, the ratio should be 20 estrogen to 1 progesterone. So you don't do equal parts. It's like still estrogen needs to be up here and then the progesterone a little bit, but you do need a little bit for a buffer. Even if, I had someone say, well, I'm not, I had my hysterectomy, everything was removed. I don't need the progesterone. But to me, I'm like, yeah, I think you do for just health reasons and whatnot. So hormonal abnormalities, intermittently elevated FSH, elevated normal, depressed estriol, and depressed progesterone. So that's why I love the Dutch, because it'll show us all those different levels throughout a period of time. And low estrogen is not necessarily always the problem. There can be low DHEA. So if you guys have heard of that at all, that's our natural steroid in our body. And in our 20s, it kind of peaks about 25. So that's why you can go out, you can have a heavy night of drinking, you can, binge your way through a week or two, and then you can starve yourself for a couple weeks and lose all that weight and bounce back, and you're in good shape because you have a lot. And you can also do a workout or fall down. You don't break a bone, you're not out for years and years because you have estrogen, but you also have DHEA, which is a natural steroid in our body. So there are ways to increase it. And so that's pretty much the number one thing I'm seeing with ladies when I look at their Dutch test. Awesome, Christiane. So good to see you. Beautiful. Enjoy your call. Oopsies. I was so excited about the message. Okay. I gotta go back one more. FSH. Okay. So what was I saying? Darn. Oh well. Okay. Well, I was on my roll about DHEA. So DHEA is a wonderful thing that helps our body to get rid of inflammation. So if you're having brain fog, all those kinds of things, we absolutely can work with that. So some of the symptoms of peri is PMS, sleep disturbances, menstrual irregularities, breast tenderness, mood, all the things I talked about. So we could say, yeah, we kind of know those things are in a weird place. Let's supplement, but I want to see levels. I'm like, come on, we can, why not? It's a $300 test. It's not even, I mean, I know that's a lot of money, but it gives you a lot of information about your body. Frankly, I wouldn't mind the insomnia at all if I hadn't lost my libido at the same time. Ha ha. Not funny, but funny. Misdiagnosis. So I feel like, I've seen this quite a bit is, a lot of OBs are misdiagnosing or they're just treating things before they're actually looking at all the issues. So, like treating menstrual irregularities, so like putting people on birth control pills, and it can also make other symptoms worse, like weight gain, higher risks, for breast cancer, things like that. And then just even, once you are off of them, just kind of trying to regulate. I've worked with so many women who have had IUDs that are just in a bad place or birth control. It's causing a lot of weight gain and issues there, mood issues, and then, like they're having the wrong, type of hormones. So I think that that's not a good idea. Like it seems easy. It's the easy button on what to do, but it definitely we could do other things. I am not one to demonize antidepressants at all. I think they are definitely effective. In our family, we have, certain some I would love my, we take them. So it's not like there's anything wrong, but sometimes that's the first go-to and they haven't looked at their hormones. They haven't looked at even the thyroid function very well. They haven't looked at mineral deficiencies, vitamin D. There's so many things that they need to kind of examine other than just here, take this, you're going to feel better. Again, it's the easy button. um, Multiple breast biopsies. They don't look at thyroid function or even, diuretics. So the other female hormone, progesterone, let's talk about this one quick. It produced by the ovaries. We don't hear a lot about it. It's like estrogen gets this hero status because it can do all these things, but also the progesterone is needed. So it decreases breast like growth. And so when you get that estrogen dominance, that's why you'll see your breasts increase somewhat. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just, I think for some like myself, I've seen a big increase. I'm like, I don't know if that's good for me. So progesterone can help with that. Bone, so it stimulates osteoblasts, so it actually lays new bone. And so that is actually one of the biggest correlations to death or disability is when we get older, if we are to break our bone. Oh no, Rita wasn't here. If we are to break a bone, there's so many studies that correlate that actually it can be very serious. Like if we break our hip, the recovery is a lot harder. So it's really important to have strong bones. And one of the ways we do that is through muscle, but progesterone also does it. It also increases your thyroid activity, which, like I've said, is one of the most important things for our body. It's our body's thermostat to all the other hormones and our pituitary gland, all of it works together. And so it also stimulates our normal sex drive. So that too, not just testosterone, like progesterone is in charge of that. And it also is a diuretic. So it takes, water out, and that's good for us too, so that we're not getting too much inflammation. It decreases uterine muscle contractions. It binds GABA receptors. So GABA is actually what happens when we drink alcohol. GABA is like one of the things that's increased. And so it binds to those receptors, which is kind of happy. Like, if you have a drink or two, you're kind of happy, you like, that's why you want to have the next one and the next one. And you're like, I've gonna get sick, but I still want another one. So give me another glass of wine. And it's because that GABA has increased and it feels good. Decreases anxiety and depression. So I love GABA. I don't love alcohol because of the other side effects. But progesterone, guys, is in, all in for this. So we can do tests, and you guys know we offer these: progesterone, estradiol, FSH, LH, and we do it salivary or urine, actually, or you could do it through blood. I don't like blood, and this is why. It's really hard, I feel like, to look at someone's hormones, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday or Thursday because we don't really know what's happening the rest of the day. So to me, I'm like, I want to see a 24-hour pattern. And then I also want to see a little more detail with estrogen, especially in a woman who still is in perimenopause, because I want to see what that whole cycle looks like for them over one whole day. So again, not super expensive, but it gives us a lot of detail into what's going on. So here's some supplementation you can do. And I actually have a liposomal that I like to use. It's a drop and you put it underneath your tongue, but it's an estrogen, progesterone, like together. And it even has a little testosterone too, and I think some DHEA. So it's a nice blend. But you can also, it's like from a plant. You can also do oral and you can do vaginal. So if like you're having issues with being not having as much lubrication or whatnot, there's a vaginal you can do. There's also creams that, are very easy to get. And then there's like, I think there is a patch. So you can do pills, creams, anybody ever taken progesterone or estrogen?
I have. This is Brenda.
Okay. Hey, Brenda. Yeah, what are you taking?
Well, I don't take progesterone anymore, but I do have some of the cream, which is to help with the dryness.
Yeah.
So that's estrogen cream,
And
and I
does
don't
it work?
know.
Do you like
I
it?
I don't like it, but I think it works.
Okay. What, I guess, yeah, any reason why? Like you don't feel good after you use it,
Oh
or you
no, it's just you put a cream in, it's gonna come back out, right? So it's like the messy factor. It's not terribly messy, but it's something. You know what I mean?
got it. Yes. Yeah. I think it's kind of genius in a way though, because it kind of treats both issues. Like, oh, okay, now we've got a little lubrication, plus we have a little progesterone. So, the blood flow, all of that also, happens. You can do like cyclic. So, but you're in menopause, correct, Brenda?
Yep.
Yeah. So we won't even be talking a lot about cyclic because that's, we're trying to match somebody's, perimenopause or their menses phase. So during luteal, typically the days 12 to 28 are 14 to 30. So that matches our cycle because, as you remember, estrogen goes up here and then it comes down and then progesterone slides in. So 1 to 15 to ovulation, and then 15 to 30 is progesterone time. So, like I said, we're almost, different people. So they're not all of them are FDA regulated and they're made by compounding pharmacies and they're typically plant sources. And there are risks. Like the one that I love, Desert Biologicals, because theirs is a lower dose and then they do kind of the all three together, or you can just do a testosterone drop, which helps a lot of women who have no testosterone feel a lot better without as much risk. When you go up to higher doses, what has been said is like you can go on HRT, but let's go as least amount of time on it as possible. So it's really not something you want to have the rest of your life just because they don't know the long-term studies. And there has been some correlation with stroke, heart attack, and we already know that's an issue for women, right? Um, so you can also do SSRIs, but this is the slide I'm all about, right? Like here's the one without a lot of side effects or really any at all. And so let's see if I can, this is the one we try. the most with you guys is, and it's funny because it's like other modalities. Well, the most important in my opinion. So exercise, and that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is how can you exercise without burning off your muscle or demonizing cardiovascular? And so typically, like our body has a certain amount of time, like there's different zones they've talked about for exercise. Has anybody heard of the zones? Like zone one, two, three, four with your heart rate for exercise? Okay, so one of the biggest reasons why walking, as I see Greta walking, why it's just such a celebrated and amazing activity for women, especially in perimenopause and menopause, is because it does a lot for our blood sugars. So it actually helps our body to decrease its blood sugar. And then another thing is it goes right into our NEAT. If you remember the NEAT we talked about, so non-exercise burning activity in our bodies. So, like getting up and moving, going, walking around your house, when you shop at Target, you walk a little bit further. Like, none of that is stressing your body, and your body just, it actually, like walking, it's just a non-stressful way to burn fat, and it's not gonna disrupt any of your hormones. And I would say, like, your zone one or two, maybe three when you're in walking, like your heart rate doesn't get much above, 120 usually. So that's not a stress or a threat. And our body also is burning more energy. So it's just a great thing. But there are ways to be in zone four and five and trick your body into not burning its own muscle. And that's by shortening up the duration of time. So that's where these HIIT workouts come in. And that was one of the ways, like I did way too long and way too stressful when I did the bodybuilding, got way too low fat on my body for good function, but it did work, right? And so to me, it's like, why don't we do a 12-minute HIIT workout? But the problem with being at home doing it is that we have knee issues, shoulder issues, all these things. So it's like you can't just burpee it out for 1 minute and then take 2 minutes and just kind of chill. But that's essentially what a HIIT workout looks like. The best way I like to do HIIT is if you've ever used battle ropes. Those are great. Like if you can get a hold of those, you can, get your heart rate up for 30 seconds and then just kind of hang back for a minute, do it again 30 seconds, until you get to 12 minutes. And basically you've, kept your heart rate high throughout. It's been short enough that your body's not like, I'm burning the muscle. Like it's still working on your glycogen stores, your carbohydrates in the muscle. So it's feeding the muscles, it's not depleting that. And you're also, it doesn't take very long. Another really good one, and Rita, this would be great for you, is the Airdyne bike because I know you have access to it. So I do the Airdyne bike for 12 minutes and it's just fabulous. Like it's my warm up sometimes or my actual cool down. It depends on what I have time for. But I do it like 3 days a week. So not a whole bunch. But basically I'll use it, where you use the hand things. It's really hard. Like I'll go 30 seconds, as hard as I can, and then I will like rest for a minute and then do it again for 30 seconds until I get to 12 minutes. So it's not overly stressful. I believe it, really just burns fat right away, which is good. And then it keeps my body is basically working for the next 24 hours to repair itself from that little workout. And that's good because that brings our BMR, our basal metabolic rate, up. So that does make a lot of sense to me. Anybody do HIIT workouts now? No. Okay, I'll take that as a no, not doing it. So that is something like if you're plateaued out and you're like, "God, I'm just, I don't want to eat less," because remember, eating less just gives our body less nutrients and it stresses our body. And so that's not a good way to do it, cutting calories. Instead, if we can add more walking, or some additional HIIT workouts. That's a new thing where our body can basically have all the nutrients it needs. To me, that's genius, which doesn't take long. And so the only thing that, is required for it is having, either some kind of machine, I feel like, or you have to be in a place where you could do burpees, squats, but you really, and mountain climbers, like where you can really go all out if you don't have equipment. And I think that's hard on our knees, our shoulders, our back. So that's tough. Any questions about HIIT workouts? Okay. Okay. The next piece of this whole thing is high fiber, lower fat. So, not completely lower fat, right? Because fat helps our hormones to regulate. But, like I said, like I found myself years ago, eating low carb, which that can be bologna, beef sticks, nitrate foods, all kinds of issues there. Some veggies for sure. But it was very high in fat and probably medium in protein, if I were to look at the macros. And, I never lost weight. Nothing ever really worked out for me in that kind of situation. Now, when I increase my fiber, I feel fuller. Bowel movements are much more regular. And then fat is also, helping. I have enough to cushion and make the hormones work, but not overeating since it is such a dense nutrient. Like you can eat one slice of cheese or a handful of nuts or have a tablespoon of peanut butter, which remember we talked about that. That gives you 120 calories. It doesn't have a ton of nutrients. It doesn't do a lot for your body. Whereas fiber, you're breaking it down, it's helping you with your insulin, and then you have just enough fat to work with your body. Rita says, with the HIIT workouts, are you looking for a target or just tired and heart beating? I feel like it's more of a perceived exertion type thing where you could have your Fitbit on and you could be looking for a heart rate of, 150 or higher just for that 30 seconds. And remember, it'll take a little bit to get there, on the Airdyne bike. And then what's cool is it stays elevated for the minute that you're even resting. So it'll go down, but it's not going to go down to your resting heart rate. So throughout this 12 minutes, it's going to be elevated the whole time. But perceived exertion is really good, because everybody just like I have some clients who are really out of shape, and then when I'd put them on anything like walking lunges or whatever, their heart rate would just go to like 180. And I'm like, oh, wow, this person doesn't need a lot to push them that way, but also perceived they couldn't talk. Like, it's like you can talk, but you don't feel like it, That's, a little bit higher than that during your interval. And then coming down is just a rest period. Does that make sense?
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Are you thinking of doing it, Rita?
Yeah, maybe. I'll try it out. I'll try it out.
Okay. Yeah, I do this little thing on the Airdyne bike that makes it interesting. Like I'll do my warm up before I even do this HIIT workout, and I'll do just the arms, and then I do just the legs, then I do it in combo. And I do like 45 seconds, 45 seconds, 45 seconds. And it just keeps me, my brain engaged. But the time goes really fast. So that's what's cool about it. I haven't really seen, like when I owned Tone Today, my gym, we had battle ropes, we had different sizes, we had sleds. Those were great HIIT workouts, but I haven't really seen those at Lifetime. I'm sure they exist somewhere. So, like to me, I'm like the Airdyne bike's really the best option. Another one is where you pull the straps down, the ski erg. That
Yep, I
also,
was just going to ask about that because I could see using that thing. I like that thing a lot because that it's so surprising how much it gets your heart rate up, but it doesn't seem like a lot of work. You know what I mean? It's like how
yeah.
is this much? How is it tiring me out this much? But it's not this much work. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Sure. Yes. No. And I've had that same thought, Rita, because I'm like, I enjoy this way better than the rower. Like, I want to just die when I get on that thing. I just like count the seconds to get off the rower. I don't, you may like rowing, I don't know. But the ski erg is, it's so the motion that you're doing it, you're basically doing it like a deadlift. So it's a full body movement because most of the hip hinging is where you're getting the power. So the arms are just basically following through. And it's kind of like with Taekwondo, when you go in to break your board, you're not just swinging your arm. If you step into it with your hip, then you break your board. So it's the same thing. It's the hips are basically ripple affecting, and that's such a large muscle group that has so much power. So yeah, I like it too. I might do my next hit workout there, Rita. I like that. Okay, so also maintaining regular sexual activity. And it doesn't have to be with a partner, and I'll just put it that far because, you know, it's our bodies really love that. Like, there's a whole host of things hormonally that happen when we do have an orgasm. So it's important to continue that, even if you've just put it out of your mind. I would say definitely think about bringing that back in some way, shape, or form. It's really healthy for females to continue to, you know, have regular sexual activity or at least have an orgasm. So, so it's not the worst thing in the world, right? Decrease your alcohol intake. So people will ask me this when they come on, and I'm not like selling this, like, yeah, come into my program, you can never touch alcohol again or junk food, right? You guys know we're all about, you know, lifestyle changes, long lasting sustainability. And I know people like to drink. But I also know it is so hard on your sleep. And that's the number one thing, and your heart rate variability, because it taxes your sleep. So, heart rate variability is one of the biggest things that they're attaching to longevity, good health. And so, I don't know if you've ever tracked your sleep after one or two drinks, you'll probably notice you don't get as good REM. You're not having as well of a deep sleep. Even if you're out for 9, 10 hours, your sleep quality is terrible. And that's why we get that tired effect. And it can last for a couple days, and then it ripples into our heart rate variability. So if I do have women who want to drink, you know, definitely during the day, make sure to meet your protein goals because that's going to keep hormone levels good. And then have a drink, make sure that you're, or two, make sure you're hydrating, probably even, you know, eating a little something after before you go to bed. And then the next day, electrolytes like crazy. But just know that there's not much you can do. Your body is going to be dealing with that for 12 to 14 hours, and it's going to put aside fat burning or any other thing that you've got going that's kind of going well for your body because it has to address that alcohol. So that's a no-brainer to me to decrease alcohol intake. Don't smoke. Stop smoking. So anyone a smoker here, and I also not demonizing that at all, but that definitely is causing more issues with your hormones, like that inflammation. It's constant inflammation, and a lot of us are allergic to the things in smoke. So it's not just like in our lungs, but it's also creating like inflammation craziness in your body. And then that daily sunlight. So, so important. I was talking to my son yesterday about that. We're actually, he likes to argue with me a lot, which I like. He's 17. He doesn't listen to mom anymore. And it gets me thinking too. So I said, you know, it's this sunblock. Everybody's putting sunblock on. And he's like, Mom, that's what keeps your face looking young. You can't go without sunblock. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But like, if we're always putting on, you know, glasses or sunglasses or sunblock or not going outside as much, basically our vitamin D levels are sinking, our melatonin's out of sync, and our cortisol's really off. So that's why we want to, you know, get in the sun for the first 15 minutes of the day, just get some sunlight. And like I've got my little sun lamp here that sits on my desk. So on the days it's not sunny, I can just turn it on, drink my water in front of it, and, you know, do that. And so I definitely think we need to wear sunblock, but maybe not as often and not over our entire body. So getting that sun into our skin, our body, all of that is really important. It's part of, it's kind of like the same thing when we get barefoot on the grass. It grounds our body, it lowers our stress level. It's called grounding, and it has a whole host of hormonal effects. And so that kind of brings me to the last one of relaxation, stress reduction. I just think sometimes we're go, 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 and it's really hard to unwind, de-stress. So anybody have anything that they've worked on as far as relaxation and stress that they feel like could help us? I would love some suggestions.
I'll
I
throw
believe
one
in,
out there. Oh,
I
go ahead, Greta.
was going to say, I believe in taking baths and candles and aromatic scents that you really enjoy, soothing music, all of that.
Ooh, I love that. And it's just true. Like last night I had a little incense, and I know there's issues with incense. But yeah, it just when it's like a certain kind of smell, and then like
Mhm,
sounds can soothe you. I've put on just even classical music. It just kind of uplifts me when I'm cooking.
mhm,
Um, Rita says, I wish I could provide. Well, we'll help you, Rita. We'll carry you here. So, baths too. Do you put Epsom salts in your bath, Greta?
mhm.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Like
Not all the time, but once in a while. Yeah.
yes, all the minerals just, in coming into your body is amazing. And yeah, just even the lighting, like lighting is so important, I feel like. I do have a mobility program I can put in, and then we did have our somatic yoga a couple weeks ago. If anyone wants that queued up, let us know. Just, if you're watching the recording, put somatic yoga in, because I thought that was just really interesting. She had us kind of look in certain directions, and it relaxed my neck. It relaxed certain areas of my body I never kind of thought about. It wasn't like hard to do. Brenda?
Oh, I was going to say that I go for a walk. So I've always, well, when it's not really crappy weather or super cold in Minnesota, I walk my dogs. I have short hair dogs, so they don't love the winter. But when I do take them out for a walk, it's good for me and it's good for them. And I just think it is one of the things that helps with stress reduction is just getting out of the house and away from my desk because I work at home.
Mhm,
Yes, for sure. I know for me it's hard sometimes when I'm doing calls and in my office to switch over, to family mode, especially when you're in the house now because we don't go out as much. So yeah, a walk is like a reset for me too, Brenda. Like it kind of, and I've found I'm afraid to go by myself. This is the weirdest thing. I'm not afraid. I'm just like resistant to going alone. But when I do go alone with my dog, I love it. Like I listen to birds. I
mhm,
sense the way, the air is just like I see animals. It's really nice. So it's one of those things I have to
mhm.
kind of push myself, but once I do it, I'm like, oh, that was awesome. So I love that.
Well, I've
Um,
had problems trying to get my walks in, and someone suggested podcasts. And then I thought, I really don't want to listen to another human. I just want to listen to nature. So,
Yeah, I agree. And it's like energy, right? Like everything's an energy. So the classical music, yeah. So me too. I'm like, do I always have to be performing or learning or getting something done? I feel like that's kind of what's sold to us is just do, do, do. But we never have
mhm,
that time to unplug. So it's like, okay, even when we're walking now, we're listening to a podcast and I do think there's a time and place, but also just letting yourself take a break.
mhm.
That's true relaxation. Yeah. I love you guys. Like, what'd you think of this? Was it TMI or beneficial? Like I said, it's a lot that we probably already knew. But I just think I'm talking to ladies all the time in sales that I don't even know about this stuff. And then I'm like, our own group, we haven't really done a good presentation on how the hormones work, why we're, talking about like eat this food, eat the pro. It's not just eat the protein. I get so sick of that. There's so many more dimensions to this. So yeah. Please post the somatic yoga recording. Will do, Brenda. Okay, you guys, well, have a fantabulous week. We have a new person working with us as well. Her name's Alina, so she joined our team. She's dietitian, hormone specialist out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I believe. She's so sweet. So I'd like for her to kind of come on next week, introduce herself. We'll all be on as a team and she'll share some of her goodness. So she's already taught me a few things. So looking forward to next week. If there is something that you have a question about, please let us know. We're here to support and keep you going. All right.
Sounds good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank-
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Have a great week.